Hey everyone, welcome back to my Other Realms of Reality podcast. This is part 7 and it's to do with soul fragments. This particular subject is very, very deep, so I'm going to cover it as best I can because it can really go off in many different directions as a topic. And I feel it is something that we are still trying to understand on some level, like with anything mystical or paranormal. Although this topic also goes into mental health and disassociation. But before I go into one of my own experiences as an example, I just want to share my own understanding of what a soul fragment is and how that can actually occur. As always, please be discerning and listen to your own gut instinct and your own resonance with this information. In part 4, I talk about how there is a collective energetic source where we're all connected through frequency and vibration. If we look at the individual human, for example, we have a physical body, but there is also this understanding that we have energetic bodies too, which actually makes a lot of sense when you think if we are connected energetically, collectively, there has to be a way that we can interact with that. And it makes sense that it's an energetic field that we have around us. For example, if you go into a home and you get a vibe that you don't feel very comfortable in that home, you may be picking up on an energetic field of where somebody's had an argument or been very unhappy in that home, and you are picking up on that energetic frequency. Because everything is energy and frequency, and even bricks and mortar can hold that energetic memory. So going back to the human body, if we do have energetic bodies within us and around us, then what is a soul fragment and how does that relate to these energetic bodies? Well, you may have already have come across the spiritual term that our soul resides within us, and it's very possible that our soul is part of this energetic body, or is all of this energetic body, because it is connected to source. But this is all open to speculation. Again, it's really what resonates with you. So, what is a soul fragment? Well, my understanding is that when we experience a traumatic event or a very difficult situation, a part of our soul can fragment off and then exists independently from our human form. From a psychological perspective, when we experience one of these situations, it can get stored in our deep subconscious mind. So sometimes we're not even aware it's there, particularly if it's a past life related trauma. But also in this life, we can disassociate from it. And that can lead to a number of difficult behaviour patterns, particularly addictions. When we experience one of these traumatic events, our bodies naturally go into a fight and flight response. And depending on the level of trauma, depending on whether we have recollection of it or not, because something very, very painful we can just block out because it's our body's way of dealing with the situation and protecting us in that moment. But what can happen over time is a slight deterioration because we are not recognizing that that soul fragment has been lost and separated from us. And over time, this can come about as pain in the body, physical pain. It's our own body's expression of showing us where we need to heal. It can also come about as a disassociation, so a certain subject that relates to that trauma you may avoid, like it's a life and death situation. And as you can imagine, we can have many, many soul fragment losses within our bodies. In fact, it's very, very common because we haven't just had this lifetime, we've had other lifetimes. So in essence, a soul fragment is a piece of a human's energy body that has broken off from the main body and is existing in another time, another space. So how do we get our soul fragments back? Well, from my own personal experience, it can come in different ways, through our conscious work and through unconscious work, but mainly from my experience through conscious work. And that could be working with a shamanic practitioner, somebody that will help you go into a journey and retrieve those soul fragments, though it's usually done one at a time, because depending on the amount of traumas you've had from past lives, which is often quite a lot, and also from this life. So it can be quite a long process to retrieve your soul fragments. You can also do this yourself through meditations and through other spiritual practitioners, mediums, people that know and work with the spirit realms a lot and know how to guide you through the process. But as always, use discernment, whoever you go to, whoever you see, and the information that you take in. How does it work unconsciously then? Well, sometimes we are just intuitively doing the right things at the right time, delving into things without knowing what we are healing, and through the process we can actually achieve that healing and that soul fragment returning. And that takes me to my own personal experience I want to share with you today, which was very much an unconscious soul fragment returning. This was about a couple of years ago now. I was doing a lot of meditations at the time, and in some of them I was experiencing a lot of Egyptian themes, which I know can be quite common for a lot of people, considering it covered a very large part of our history. But I was getting really vivid meditations of going through initiations and through temples, some challenges very, very difficult. There were bits of information that were coming through from past lives. But this actually led to a particular dream that I had, and this is what I'm going to share with you now. I had this very vivid dream where I was in this temple going through these rooms, and there was somebody else with me. I remember seeing something flying at me and hitting me in the chest with a lot of force. In that moment, I woke up. It was mid-morning, and I just had this serene feeling of part of my soul returning to me. But I could still feel where the impact was that woke me up. It was like I woke myself up so that I would remember what exactly happened. I felt very comforted by this, certainly no fear at all, and I went back to sleep smiling. The following morning, I woke up and I started getting information about Egypt. Just little bits of information that I then decided to look up online and find out what it all meant. I was very much synchronistically drawn to this book, a book about shamanic healing. So I decided to purchase it without a doubt. The pull was too strong. It was from purchasing this book that I then went on to doing a series of shamanic healing practices that actually guided me to more information and knowledge about the past lives, but also some wonderful experiences. And one of those experiences was very much connected to the heart. And I do feel that there's no mistake there, because that particular soul fragment came back with such force into the heart area that it made sense that there would be some connection there with this particular book. Now, not all soul fragment retrieval will be quite so physical. In fact, some can be very, very subtle. From my experience, when you are consciously working to retrieve soul fragments, it can be more of an uplifting experience, or a feeling of being more complete and whole, a happy feeling when you are reuniting with that soul fragment. But soul fragments can also be a challenge in trying to reconnect because of the disassociation over time, and it takes a little bit of trust and reconnection with that soul fragment, and that can take time and effort, as the soul fragment has consciousness and can feel abandoned. So it needs to learn to be able to trust you again. And that may sound very far out there and bizarre, but remember, everything has consciousness and energy. And as with all practices, it's always good to raise your frequency and vibration before you attempt to connect with any soul fragments that you are wanting to reunite with. So, as I mentioned earlier, really from my experience, you can do this yourself, or you can seek out some help through a professional. And I would recommend going to a shamanic practitioner, or, like I said earlier, a medium, somebody that specializes in soul fragment retrieval. So just to finish off, as you can see by now that we all probably have quite a lot of soul fragments out there. And when we work on retrieving them one by one, what happens is our energetic soul becomes more complete and thus also raises our frequency, because we are in essence healing traumas and wounds from the past. There is a theory out there as well that soul fragments could be connected to ghosts, apparitions, residual energy. And I do feel that's very, very plausible and a very good explanation for them. Particularly the example I gave earlier, where if you go into a house and you pick up on some negative energy, and likewise, if you go into a house and you pick up on positive energy, it is classed as residual energy. Well, I'm going to finish off on that note because, like I said earlier, this is a very deep subject and I think there's a lot more here to kind of uncover. But I hope this has been helpful to some of you, and I will be back very, very soon for part 8. So take care, everyone, and I'll speak to you soon.